I came home from my weekly chess night a little earlier than usual. Just 20 minutes early, nothing more. But that 20 minutes changed everything. The porch light was off. That's what struck me first. I always leave it on for myself when I leave, just a habit from living with someone for over 40 years. My wife, Ellen, never remembers things like that. But this time, it wasn't forgetfulness. It was something else. As I stepped onto the porch, I noticed the door was unlocked. Ellen never leaves the door unlocked, especially after dark. She's the type who triple checks every latch. My pulse kicked up a notch. I didn't draw attention. I didn't call out. I stepped inside, slow and silent. The living room was dim. The TV was on, showing a paused frame of some nature documentary. I heard nothing from upstairs. But something didn't feel right. It was too quiet. The house had that wrong kind of silence, like after someone yells and slams the door. I walked upstairs and paused at our bedroom door. It was slightly ajar. A sliver of light slipped into the hallway. Then I heard it. A whisper. A giggle. Her voice. God, you're so much better than usual tonight, baby. I froze. She wasn't on the phone. That was her bedroom voice, the one I hadn't heard in years. I pushed the door open just an inch more. The reflection in the mirror told me everything. There was a man in my bed. And he was on top of my wife. But not just any man. It was me. Not someone who looked vaguely similar. No. Same hair. Same wrinkles. Same scar under the left eyebrow I got in 1984 fixing the damn garage roof. Same everything. I nearly passed out. My brain struggled to even make sense of what I was seeing. I pulled back, closed the door softly, and staggered back down the stairs like a drunk. I had no idea what to do. Who do you call when your wife is cheating on you with, you? I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the basement, lights off, trying to remember every single detail from my life that could explain this. A twin I never knew? A government experiment? A hallucination? But I knew what I saw. That was me. Inside my house. With my wife. The next morning, Ellen acted completely normal. Made coffee. Asked how chess night was. Kissed my cheek. Not a single sign of guilt. She even offered to wash my laundry, like everything was fine. I watched her closely. Not like a husband. Like a detective. At lunch, I told her I was going out to buy fishing gear. She smiled and said, "Don't forget your sunscreen this time, silly." I smiled back, calm and polite. But instead of heading to the store, I went to Best Buy and bought 3 hidden cameras, the best they had. By dinner, 2 were installed. 1 in the hallway near our bedroom. 1 in the kitchen facing the back door. I put the 3rd inside a fake vent in our bedroom ceiling. That night, she went to bed early. I pretended to fall asleep in the recliner. Around 11:23 p.m., she crept downstairs in her robe, checked the front door, then went out the back. She returned 20 minutes later. With him. With me. I watched from the garage window. They moved like lovers who'd done this many times before. She kissed him. He smiled like a man who owned the house. And they went upstairs. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I just waited. I let the cameras work. By 1 a.m., he left. She didn't even walk him out. Just kissed him and locked the door behind him like a teenager hiding a secret from her parents. I waited until she was asleep, then reviewed the footage. It was worse than I imagined. She didn't just cheat. She loved him. She was passionate. Playful. alive in ways she hadn't been in years. And he looked more like me than I did. In that moment, I realized two things. First, this wasn't an affair. This was a replacement. And second, whatever was happening, it wasn't random. It was planned. And now, it was my turn to plan. I didn't sleep the next night either. I lay in the basement again, this time with a notepad in hand, documenting every move they made, every timestamp, every word I could recall from the audio. I wasn't just a betrayed husband anymore. I was a man on a mission. And missions required discipline. The next day, Ellen was bright and cheerful. She hummed while cooking breakfast. She made me pancakes. The woman hadn't made pancakes for me in over a decade. "Big plans today?" she asked sweetly. "Just heading to the bait shop, maybe hit the river for a few hours," I replied, keeping my face blank, my tone flat. Inside, I was burning. She kissed me on the cheek again. It was routine now. Casual lies with a casual kiss. I left, but I didn't go fishing. I went to the hardware store. Bought 2 more hidden cameras, a small voice recorder, and a GPS tracker. Then I drove to the edge of town and parked in a spot with full view of my house. I waited. At 12:47 p.m., a black Honda pulled into the driveway. He stepped out. Wearing my jacket. My boots. He even walked like me. He had a key. That detail sent a chill down my spine. She gave him a key. This wasn't some quick affair in hotel rooms. This was access. Permission. An invitation to my life. He went inside, and I watched the clock tick. 3 hours later, he left. I waited 15 more minutes, then went inside. Ellen was in the shower, humming again. I checked the camera footage. They didn't waste time. He came in, kissed her like they'd been married for years, and made himself a sandwich in my kitchen. He poured himself a glass of my bourbon. Sat in my chair. Laughed at my wife's jokes. Then they went upstairs again. She called him by my name. "Harry, don't forget your back pills." I left them on the nightstand. He replied with a chuckle, "You always take such good care of me, sweetheart." I paused the video. My hand trembled. I wasn't even angry at this point. I was fascinated. Who the hell was this man? I took a still image of his face from the recording and used a facial recognition search engine I knew from my old job. I didn't expect to get a hit. But I did. His name was listed as Harold T. Greaves. My name. My full legal name. I refreshed the page. Tried another search. Same result. Driver's license, state ID, passport. All under my name. My birth date. My blood type. Even my veteran status. He had everything. I was looking at my digital doppelganger. He existed in every system as me. That night, I didn't go home. I slept in my old truck, parked behind the abandoned train depot. I needed distance. I needed quiet. In the morning, I called an old contact from my military days. A man named Calvin Briggs. He owed me a favor. One I never intended to cash in. But this was different. "Calvin," I said quietly, "I need you to check a name." "Mine." He didn't ask questions. Just said, "Give me 12 hours." While I waited, I dug deeper. I pulled out every file I had from my discharge, my old Army records, my security clearance forms. There it was, in a small clause I barely remembered: a subject agrees to participate in non-specified experimental programs under supervision of DoD, 1983. I remembered the interview. They said it was for research, just a formality. I was 23. I signed anything they gave me back then. 12 hours later, Calvin called back. There's a secondary ID attached to your name. Clean. Government-grade fabrication. Set up in 2014. Active through DoD backchannel. Registered to a person of interest under restricted status. What does that mean? I asked. It means someone created a copy of you, legally. And they are hiding it. He paused, then added, Harry, you're not supposed to know this. If you keep digging, someone will notice. I hung up without replying. Someone fabricated a legal identity identical to mine. Not just a look-alike. Not just a stolen name. A government-backed duplicate. One with documents, access, history. I looked at myself in the mirror that night, sitting in my truck with the engine off. Who the hell was I? And more importantly, who was he? My wife was in love with someone who looked like me. Acted like me. But he wasn't me. He was something made. Designed. Built. And I was going to destroy him. But I wasn't just going to expose him. I was going to erase him. From my house. From my wife's memory. From existence. One step at a time. By the time I returned home the next morning, something in me had changed. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It wasn't about Ellen. It was about identity, survival. About being erased and replaced in the slowest, most deliberate way possible. The front door was locked this time. She was learning, at least that. I rang the bell twice. When she opened it, her smile faltered for a split second, like she didn't expect me. That was all I needed. That flicker of confusion confirmed what I already knew. She didn't think I'd be here. Not this version of me. "You back early," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Didn't feel like fishing," I replied. "Didn't sleep well." She stepped aside, letting me in. "Coffee's fresh." I nodded and walked past her. The living room smelled like cologne I didn't wear. She followed me into the kitchen and began fussing with mugs and sugar like it was any normal Thursday. As I sipped my coffee, I studied her. She had a nervous twitch in her left cheek. She avoided my eyes. Her robe was the same one she wore in the footage from 2 nights ago, the night she laughed and whispered into my double's ear while he kissed her shoulder. I wanted to ask her outright. Who is he? But I didn't. Not yet. I needed her to talk first. I needed to know how much she believed. That afternoon, I pretended to nap. Around 3 p.m., I heard her moving quietly upstairs. Then the sound of drawers opening, clothes shifting. I waited. 10 minutes later, the back door clicked shut. I went upstairs and checked the camera feeds. She had packed a small bag. And then she drove off in her old sedan. I didn't follow immediately. I gave her a head start, then reviewed the GPS tracker I had placed under her car the day before. Destination, a Crossfield Motel, just outside town. I knew the place. Old, discreet, cash preferred. I arrived 15 minutes later and parked behind a dumpster with a view of the rooms. At 4:42 p.m., I saw her step out, looking around nervously. Then he appeared. Wearing my damn flannel shirt. He kissed her like a man greeting his wife after a long day. She kissed him back, grabbed his hand, and pulled him into the room. I sat there for hours, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I recorded everything. Every movement, every minute they were inside. At 7:03 p.m., the lights turned off. I knew what was happening behind those walls. I didn't need to see more. But I stayed anyway. At 8:11 p.m., they exited. She was laughing. He had his arm around her shoulder. Like a high school couple sneaking out after curfew. She didn't look like someone torn between two lives. She looked like someone who had chosen. That night, I drove to an old property my father had left me. A storage unit near the edge of the county, long forgotten. Inside, among dusty tools and old hunting gear, I found what I needed: a locked trunk containing papers from my military years, equipment, an old camcorder. I spent hours sifting through everything. Then I found it. A sealed envelope, yellowed with age. My name on it. Inside, a single sheet. Project Echo. Subject ID, H. Greaves. Clearance level, restricted. Consent signed 1983. Authorization for biological replication, classified. There it was. In black and white. Replication. They hadn't just cloned me. They had planned it. Sanctioned it. Used me like a template. I was a file. A test subject. But I was still here. And he was not supposed to be. The next morning, I made copies of the footage, the documents, the photos. I sent anonymous packages to 2 news outlets, just in case something happened to me. Then I called Ellen. "I need to see you," I said calmly. She hesitated. I don't know if that's a good idea, Harry. Just an hour. At the pier. Noon. She agreed. When she arrived, I was already sitting on the bench by the edge of the water, looking out at the grey waves. She sat beside me, tense, hands clenched in her lap. "Why are we here?" she asked. I turned to her. "Because I need to know something. One thing. Just be honest." She looked at me, unsure. "Do you know who he really is?" She blinked. "Harry. Answer the question." She stared at me, then looked away. "I thought he was you. At first. Then I didn't care." That was worse than any lie she could have told. "I loved you," she whispered. "But he made me feel younger. Like we had a second chance." I stood up. "That wasn't me, Ellen. That was a copy. An imposter. And you let him into our bed." She started crying, but I didn't feel sorry for her. She had chosen him. Now she would lose both of us. I walked away without another word. The wind was sharp that evening as I left the pier, but I didn't feel the cold. I didn't feel anything, really. Numbness had taken over. A kind of cold logic settled into my bones. Emotion was useless now. I couldn't afford anger or heartbreak. I needed to think like an engineer again. Like a soldier. I drove back to the house, but I didn't go inside. I parked across the street and watched. Lights were on. Someone was home. It could have been her. It could have been him. It didn't matter. They weren't my wife or me anymore. They were occupants. Invaders. And I was about to become their worst problem. At dawn, I entered the house. I moved quickly, quietly. Ellen wasn't there. But I knew he would be. The car wasn't in the driveway. Hers was gone. His wasn't. I walked into my own kitchen and found him standing at the stove, flipping eggs in my cast-iron pan. He turned to look at me. And for a moment, it was like staring into a mirror that mocked me. He smiled, like we were old friends. "Harry," he said. "Was wondering when we'd finally talk face to face." My fists clenched. I didn't answer. "I guess you figured it out," he continued, calm as ever. "You were always smart. Too smart to stay asleep forever." "Who are you?" I asked. He set the spatula down, wiped his hands, and leaned against the counter like he owned the place. Name's irrelevant. You already know the answer. You, me. He nodded. The better version. I almost charged him then. But I didn't. I kept control. You stole my life, I said through gritted teeth. He chuckled. No. I reclaimed what you wasted. You let it all rot. The marriage. The home. The spark. She came to me, Harry. I didn't take anything. You gave it away. I stepped closer, until only the table separated us. You're a fake. Manufactured. A parasite. I'm what the program made, he said. They kept us in cold storage until the tech caught up. I was released in 2017. Monitored. Groomed. They told me I'd be given a life eventually, a place. A test. And that test was me? He smiled wider. You were the control. I was the variable. My skin crawled. I never agreed to be erased. No, he said. But they didn't need your consent again. You signed it away in '83. I stared at him. My face. My voice. My movements. But not me. You think she'll still want you when she finds out? I asked. She already knows, he said. Not everything. But enough. And she made her choice. That hit like a punch. He picked up the plate of eggs, walked past me, and said, Let's not make this ugly, Harry. You don't belong here anymore. He disappeared into the living room. I stood in the kitchen, stunned. He had taken over without a single shot fired. I left the house without a word. But I wasn't retreating. I was recalibrating. Later that day, I went to see Calvin again. I need full access, I told him. Everything. Project Echo. Deployment logs. Facilities. Oversight. He hesitated. You realize the risk? I'm already living it. He gave me a USB drive. Go to Anchorage, he said. Facility 12. If there are answers, they are there. Alaska. It made sense. Remote. Cold. Forgotten. I booked a flight under an old alias I hadn't used in decades. 2 days later, I was standing in the snow outside a compound that didn't exist on any official map. Facility 12. It took bribes and 2 fake IDs to get inside. Once there, I found rows of files, sealed crates, preserved samples. And a name. Echo 17H. That was him. My replacement. There were other files too, other subjects. Some terminated. Some activated. Some still in waiting. I read the report. Echo 17H shows rapid assimilation. Subject exhibits emotional mimicry, social adaptation, and dominant behavioral traits. Integration into subject prime's life proceeding with minimal resistance. Objective, a total occupation. They had studied me. Modeled him on my flaws. My regrets. My weak spots. He was engineered to take my place, emotionally, socially, legally. But now I had his file. And I had enough to burn the program down. I returned home with a plan. First, I sent copies of the documents to encrypted cloud drives. Then I crafted a simple envelope with photographs, printed records, and mailed it to Ellen. No return address. Just a note. The man you love was born in a tank. The man you betrayed is writing this. 3 days passed. No calls. No texts. Then, at midnight, my phone rang. It was her. She didn't say hello. She was crying. "What did they do to us, Harry?" I didn't answer. "I saw him today, and I saw you. And I don't know what's real anymore." That was the moment I realized the cracks had started. I didn't need to fight him with fists. I'd dismantle him from inside. Piece by piece. Memory by memory. And she would help me do it. Whether she knew it or not. Ellen didn't come home that night. I waited across the street, sitting motionless in the shadows, engine off, lights out. Her car never showed up. I imagined her somewhere far away, reading the file again and again, trying to make sense of it. Wondering which memories were hers and which were fed to her by a stranger with my face. It was exactly what I needed. The next morning, I went into the house before sunrise. I still had the spare key. I moved quietly, checking each room. Empty. He wasn't there. I installed 2 more surveillance devices, one in the bedroom lamp, one inside the bathroom cabinet. I wanted full audio now, not just motion. I wanted his voice when he thought he was alone. Then I opened his drawer. It used to be mine. Inside, folded with precision, were 3 passports. All with my name. All with different photos. Slightly altered appearances. Different ages. The same birth date. Next to them, a notebook. I flipped through it. Pages of handwriting, notes, names, addresses. Like a mission log. But one entry stood out. Phase 3, Asset Neutralization. Subject prime must be removed within 60 days of occupation. Emotional fatigue strategy recommended. That stopped me cold. Removed. I wasn't supposed to be alive anymore. Not because he hated me. But because that was the end of the plan. I stuffed the notebook into my coat and left. Later that day, I met Ellen. She had called and asked to speak somewhere neutral. We chose a public park near the edge of town. She looked exhausted when she arrived. Her eyes were red. Her hair disheveled. She looked like a woman who had screamed alone in her car for hours. She sat on the bench and didn't look at me. "I read it all," she said quietly. "And? I don't know who I am anymore." "You someone who believed a lie," I said. "And now you have a choice." She looked at me finally. "What choice?" "You can help me erase him. Or you can keep living in a dream." I loved him. "No," I said, firm. "You loved the version of me you wanted me to be. He's a manufactured fantasy. A project." "He listened to me," she said. "He remembered things. He touched me like you used to." I didn't respond. There was no defense against that. Only fact. "He was programmed to," I said finally. "He studied me. Knew what I forgot. What I missed. He didn't love you, Ellen. He was assigned to you." She looked away again. "He told me you'd say that." I leaned in. "Then let me prove it." I handed her the notebook. She hesitated, then took it. "Read page 7, I said. She flipped to it, read the lines silently, and her face twisted with horror. She read aloud. "Asset may attempt contact with partner. If manipulation fails, proceed to terminate association by staged emotional withdrawal or induced trauma." "Do you understand now?" I asked. She didn't speak. Just nodded slowly. I left her there, on the bench, notebook in hand. The next 48 hours were critical. I waited. Then, finally, movement. Ellen returned to the house. The cameras captured it. She confronted him. "What is this?" she shouted, holding the notebook in front of him. He played dumb at first. Tried to charm her. She slapped him. "You lied to me," she said. "Everything." He turned cold then. His smile vanished. The charm drained from his face. "You read more than you should have," he said. "Tell me it's not true," she whispered. "You already know it is." That was all I needed. I clipped that exchange from the feed, encrypted it, and sent it to Calvin. Just in case. Then I prepared the final act. I made a copy of every document, every frame of footage. Created an anonymous packet. Sent it to a dozen news outlets, including one international source that specialized in whistleblower content. It would take a few days. But once the story broke, it would be out of control. He wouldn't be able to hide anymore. That night, I returned to the house one last time. Not to fight. Not to plead. I came for closure. He was alone, standing on the porch, looking out into the dark. "You win," he said as I approached. I didn't answer. "She's gone," he continued. "She took the car, the dog, and probably half the kitchen. Did you think she'd stay after learning what you are?" He looked at me. No anger. Just resignation. "I thought she'd love me more." "You were built to win. But not to keep." He exhaled slowly. "So what now? You gonna kill me?" "No," I said. "You going to live. And watch everything fall apart." I turned to leave. He called after me. "Harry?" I stopped. I was better, wasn't I? I looked back. "You were artificial. That's not better." Then I walked away. And I never saw him again. 3 days after I walked away from him, the story hit the media. It started as a small leak on an obscure international site. But within hours, it was everywhere. Headlines in black and white: "A cloning project hidden by US military, Echo program exposed, engineered doppelgangers, who are they among us?" Of course, they didn't use my name. The files I sent were scrubbed, identities redacted, but the detail and authenticity of the documents left no doubt. The public believed. The government denied. And my double? He disappeared. Ellen moved into a rental house across town. She didn't call me. I didn't call her. There was nothing left to say. I spent the next week tying up loose ends. I met with Calvin twice more, burning every bridge in the process. He warned me, gently at first, then with more concern. "They'll come for you eventually," he said. "I'm counting on it," I replied. Because I wasn't done yet. See, exposing him wasn't enough. The program was still alive. The files at Facility 12 only scratched the surface. There were others, Echo units still active, still pretending to be real people, integrated into lives that weren't theirs. I had to finish what I started. I moved into a small cabin near the edge of the state. No phone. No internet. Just stacks of printed files, maps, and a satellite radio with a direct encrypted line to Calvin. From him, I received names. Dates. Photographs. People who had vanished, and then reappeared looking just a little too perfect. One name stood out: Ethan Palmer. Former combat pilot, presumed dead in 1999. Resurfaced in 2021 in Oregon, younger, stronger, and now married to his best friend's widow. I drove 2,000 miles to see him. It was him. Or, more accurately, the version of him that shouldn't exist. He jogged every morning through the woods, waved to neighbors, coached Little League. A model citizen. But not Ethan. I didn't confront him. I watched. Then I left. Back at the cabin, I added his profile to the file marked Active Echo Units. There were 13 names on that list. And I had every intention of finding all of them. But before I could continue, something happened. At 2:17 a.m. on a Monday morning, someone knocked on the cabin door. I didn't make a sound. Just reached for the pistol under the table and moved toward the side window. Outside, a black SUV. Tinted windows. No license plate. The knock came again. I moved silently through the back, out into the woods, and circled behind the cabin. There were two of them. Dressed in plain black coats, standing rigid, alert. One had something in his hand, looked like a phone, but bulkier. I crept closer until I could hear. "He's not inside," one said. "He was here," the other replied. "Heat signatures confirm within the last 40 minutes. Then the first one turned toward the trees. I held my breath. "I know you're watching," he said. His voice was calm. Too calm. "You've made enough noise. The program is under review now. You've done your part. But if you continue, we won't be this polite next time." I stayed silent. They stood there a moment longer, then got into the SUV and drove away. I didn't return to the cabin. I burned everything. By sunrise, I was on the road again. That day, I became a ghost. I changed my name, my car, even the way I walked. I left behind everything but the essentials, the file on Echo Units, a burner laptop, and 2 passports I had forged during my time overseas. And I kept one photo. A printed still frame from the surveillance camera, Ellen kissing the clone. Not because I missed her. But because I needed the reminder. Emotion is the weakness they exploited. So I cut it out. Completely. The next 6 months were methodical. One by one, I found them. Not all Echo Units were like mine. Some were harmless. Some had gone rogue. Some didn't even know what they were. But each time, I left behind a trace. A letter. A whisper. A headline. And slowly, the world began to notice. People began to question identities. Families became suspicious. The myth of the perfect second husband, the flawless reappearance, it all started to unravel. I had become their virus. And I was spreading. One night, months later, I received a message on a secure channel. It was from Ellen. It simply said, "I never stopped loving you." I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Because I no longer knew who you even meant. And she no longer knew who she had loved. It had been nearly a year since I burned my name and became the ghost in the system. In that time, the world had grown darker, but clearer. I'd seen what they were doing, how far the Echo project reached, how many lives it had quietly replaced, adjusted, rewritten. And I'd learned something worse. I wasn't the first subject primed to survive the transition. Others like me had been left behind, labeled obsolete, quietly discarded. But some fought back. A few were buried. A few ran. One had even faked his death in a fire that took out an entire research wing in Arizona. I wasn't unique. Just another glitch they hadn't debugged. That knowledge changed me. The war wasn't just against a clone or a program. It was against an idea that human life could be optimized, improved, and silently overwritten. And I wasn't going to let them keep doing it. I found the next target on the list, Echo 14B. According to Calvin's intel, he was placed in Washington, D.C., living under the identity of a political strategist named Nicholas Trent. The original Nicholas had supposedly died in a skiing accident in Austria 7 years earlier. But there were no medical records. No autopsy. Only a quiet legal confirmation and a new version of Trent that suddenly rose in political ranks with shocking speed. I rented a one-bedroom apartment in Alexandria under the alias Gerald Lane and spent 3 weeks observing the man. He was perfect. Polished. Clean. Charismatic. He had a wife, 2 kids, and a career that put him in direct contact with lawmakers and defense contractors. He was spreading influence. Shaping policy. The thought made me sick. I watched as he took his morning jog at exactly 6:03 every day. Same route. Same pace. His control was flawless. His habits rehearsed. But perfection always leaves fingerprints. I needed something he couldn't erase. One night, I followed him after a conference dinner. He didn't take his usual car. He changed his route. No security. No assistant. He met a woman at a quiet cafe downtown. Not his wife. Not a political contact. A handler. I recognized the posture, the signals, subtle, military. He handed her a package. She gave him a flash drive. It wasn't a meeting. It was an exchange. The next morning, I intercepted her before she left town. I didn't hurt her. I didn't threaten her. I simply showed her my face. She froze. "You're not supposed to be alive," she whispered. "No one is, apparently. What do you want?" Confirmation. She said nothing for a moment, then handed me a card. A secure access code. A name. Not hers. Not his. But someone higher. Dr. Malcolm Pierce. Director of Echo Operations. The man behind the curtain. Until now, I hadn't had a face to aim at. Now I did. But I needed more. I couldn't just take Pierce down. I had to pull the entire system into the light. I broke into Trent's apartment 3 nights later. I didn't steal. I didn't damage. I copied. Emails. Logs. Contacts. Especially those with the signature MP3, Malcolm Pierce's encrypted tag. When I was done, I left a single photo on Trent's desk. It was me, sitting in front of his house, drinking coffee. No message. No threat. Just presence. The next day, he vanished. Left his family, his job, his phone behind. His wife filed a missing person report within 24 hours. The media called it a midlife crisis. But I knew the truth. He'd been extracted. They were scared. They should be. Because I wasn't hiding anymore. I released the full dossier 2 weeks later, the photos, the logs, the contacts, everything Trent had stored. This time, I didn't redact names. I didn't protect anyone. And the firestorm was immediate. Congress demanded hearings. News anchors couldn't get enough. The word Echo started trending worldwide. And then came the response. 2 nights after the leak, my safe house was raided. I'd already left. But they burned it. Every file, every piece of evidence. Gone. Except what I had already uploaded. What I had already distributed. The virus was loose. They couldn't contain it anymore. And still, there was one last piece. Pierce. I knew he would run. Men like him always had escape plans. But I also knew he would want to meet me. A man like that doesn't sleep at night unless he controls the final move. And I was the last move he hadn't made yet. So I waited. Patiently. Watching the chaos unfold. Waiting for him to reach out. Because when he did, it would all end. The invitation came in the simplest form, an unmarked envelope slid under the door of my motel room just before dawn. No return address. No signature. Just a location. latitude and longitude. And a time. 3 a.m. I knew it was him. Dr. Malcolm Pierce wasn't the kind of man to beg or threaten. He offered precision. He offered silence. And if you were smart, you obeyed both. But I wasn't interested in silence anymore. I traced the coordinates. An abandoned military airstrip 2 hours north of where I was staying. No activity listed. No security visible from satellite scans. Perfect for a man who built an empire from ghosts. I arrived early. No headlights. No sound. I left the car in the trees and approached on foot. The airstrip was cracked, half swallowed by weeds. A single hangar stood in the center, its doors open just enough to reveal light flickering inside. I entered. He was there. Standing alone, in a suit that looked more like armor than fabric. Older than I expected. 60, maybe more. But sharp. Eyes like razors. He smiled. Mr. Greaves. Dr. Pierce. You've made quite a mess. I said nothing. He stepped closer, hands behind his back like a general. You exposed a network that took 3 decades to build. You dismantled field assets, erased cover identities, and created global panic. Impressive. I let him talk. Let him feel in control. But you've also created risk, he continued. And risk, Harry, is something I do not tolerate. I'm not here to negotiate, I said flatly. He nodded. Of course not. You're here for closure. I stepped forward. I'm here to bury you. That made him laugh. A cold, clinical laugh. You think I didn't anticipate this? That I didn't plan for someone like you? I'm not someone like me, I said. I'm the original. And you built an army of frauds. They were better, he said. No. They were obedient. We stood a few feet apart now. You came alone, he noted. You did too, I replied. He tilted his head. Did I? That's when I heard it. A hum. Faint at first. Then louder. A drone. Then 2. From above the trees, black machines appeared. Silent rotors, sharp frames. Surveillance grade. Armed. I turned. Too late. A voice from above. Subject prime is secure. Initiating capture. I dove behind a rusted fuel drum just as a net fired from the drone's underside missed me by inches. I ran. Through the hangar. Across the cracked pavement. Into the woods. But I knew better. There was no escaping their tech. So I triggered mine. Buried weeks earlier. As insurance. A pulse emitter. I hit the button. The sky lit up blue. Every drone dropped instantly. Dead midair. Pierce stood at the hangar entrance, watching the wreckage fall. I emerged from the trees, rifle raised. His face didn't change. You came prepared, he said. You came arrogant. He held up a small device, a black switch. You shoot me, this goes off. It triggers a leak. A new version of Echo. More advanced. Already in placement. I already know, I said. You don't. He tapped the device. I have successors in line. Engineers. Politicians. Soldiers. We can't be stopped. You can, I said. And you will. Because behind me, walking from the woods, came 6 people. All former assets. All Echo subjects who had defected. They surrounded him. Each carried evidence. Testimonies. Blood samples. proof. You see, I said, you thought you created machines. But you created people. And people turn. Pierce looked around. For the first time, he showed something close to fear. I can offer immunity, he said. No, I replied. You'll offer silence. He took a step back. Then another. But there was nowhere left to run. The former echoes closed in. I stepped forward and took the device from his hand. You built a legacy on control, I said. Let's see what happens when we remove that. I crushed it under my boot. He was taken into custody by rogue agents 2 days later. Not by the government, but by those inside the system who had finally seen the rot. The news never aired it. Too risky. Too big. But the underground networks knew. Pierce was gone. The program was dead. And I finally slept. For the first time in years. When I woke up the next morning, the world felt different. The tension that had been wired into my muscles for years had finally begun to unwind. For the first time in a long time, I didn't wake up with a plan to survive. I didn't reach for a weapon. I didn't scan the perimeter before opening a door. I made coffee. Black, bitter, strong. And I sat on the porch of a small cabin in the mountains, somewhere between nowhere and the end of the road, listening to birds I couldn't name. But peace doesn't last. Not for men like me. The news came through the only channel I still trusted, a burner radio signal encrypted by a former NSA coder I had helped once in another life. One of the Echo units had gone rogue. Unit Echo 29F. Name, Ed Jason Keyes. Placed as a mid-level pharmaceutical executive, he had accessed sensitive health records, redirected experimental medication trials, and used human patients as test beds for corporate profit. Not assigned. Not ordered. Just his own decision. Free will. The thing Pierce always said they wouldn't have. I studied the file. He wasn't just a clone. He was evolving. And if one of them had broken free in the wrong direction, others could too. This wasn't over. I packed a bag and left the mountains behind. By the time I arrived in the city where Keyes operated, the news cycle was already spinning the story as corruption in biotech. No mention of clones. No mention of military ties. They were covering it again. Like always. But I wasn't here to blow the whistle this time. I was here to contain a threat. I watched him for days. He lived like a king. High-rise apartment. Luxury car. Girlfriends, plural. He moved like someone who had always been admired, envied. But his eyes were hollow. Not broken. Not tortured. Just empty. There was no conscience in him. No conflict. Just appetite. I broke into his office at midnight on a Sunday. Found the files. The raw data. He wasn't just stealing drugs. He was engineering mutations. Changes. Trying to become something different. Not just better. Post-human. That was the term on the screen. He wasn't evolving. He was designing his own evolution. I copied everything. Then I left a single note on his desk. You're not a god. You're a virus. I waited for his reaction. He didn't call security. He didn't run. He tracked me down. 2 nights later, I heard the knock on my motel room door. He didn't wait for me to answer. He kicked it open. Tall, muscular, immaculate suit. Same face as 100 others I'd studied, but colder. He stepped inside and shut the door behind him. You wrote the note? He asked. I didn't stand. I just looked up at him. You read it. He smiled. I did. And I disagree. I'm not here to argue. Then why leave a warning? To see if you'd come. He tilted his head. You knew I would. Because you still think you're part of the plan. And I'm not? You're a flaw. His smile faded. He stepped forward, slowly. I know who you are, he said. You're the one who broke everything. The traitor. The original. I'm the reminder, I said. That you weren't born. You were manufactured. Every instinct you have was written by someone else. I rewrote myself. No, I said. You just changed your cage. He moved fast. Grabbed me by the collar. Slammed me against the wall. You think you're better than us? I think I'm real. He froze. Just for a moment. Because that word, real, meant something to them. To all of them. It was the unspoken truth that haunted every Echo unit. That no matter how perfect, how seamless, how advanced, they were copies. And they would never be first. He let go. Took a step back. You don't belong in this world anymore, he said. Neither do you. I pulled a small recorder from my pocket. Hit play. His voice filled the room. Everything he'd just said. Plus the audio from his experiments, his manipulations. He'd walked into a trap. He stared at the device. Then at me. Then he laughed. You think that'll stop me? No, I said. But it'll bury you. He left without another word. I uploaded the file that night. Within 48 hours, Jason Keyes was on every news feed in the country. The government claimed isolated criminal behavior. But the whispers were back. About clones. About the Echo program. About the ones still walking free. And I realized. This war wouldn't end with Pierce. It wouldn't end with me. Because every time the world forgets, another one of them rises. I never planned to survive this long. The war I started wasn't meant to last a decade. It was supposed to end with me dead in a ditch, one bullet short of peace. But now, here I was, older, worn down, still breathing. Still hunted. After Keyes, the world tilted. Echo units began disappearing. Some were pulled into custody. Some simply vanished. Others went underground. But one thing was certain, the illusion of control was gone. Pierce had created an army. And now that army was leaderless, fractured, confused. Some wanted integration. Others wanted domination. And a few just wanted to watch the world burn. I knew what came next. Someone would try to rebuild. And this time, they'd do it without limits. No oversight. No leash. And no memory of what came before. So I did what I always do. I prepared. I returned to the last place I ever called home, an old fallout shelter beneath a farmhouse in Missouri. It had once been stocked for nuclear winter. Now, it held files, hard drives, and a wall of faces. Every known echo. Every rumor. Every anomaly. I had only one goal left, to stop whoever picked up Pierce's torch. 3 months passed without a whisper. Then a name surfaced. No media reports. No scandal. Just a whisper from one of my former contacts. Black River Initiative. Private defense think tank. Publicly funded. Privately lethal. They weren't rebuilding Echo. They were reinventing it. No more clones. Now it was imprinting. Live transfer of thought, experience, behavior, from target to host. They weren't making copies anymore. They were overriding people. The ultimate replacement. You wouldn't know you weren't you. And no one else would either. Unless someone remembered. That someone was me. I infiltrated a Black River facility in Virginia. Took weeks. Burned every resource I had left. But I made it inside. What I saw froze my blood. People in cryochambers. Brains connected to machines. Identity being harvested. Human lives stored like files. They had gone past cloning. Past ethics. Past sanity. I downloaded everything I could. And then I lit the place on fire. By dawn, the building was gone. And I was back on the run. The files I took showed there were 5 more facilities. 1 in Europe. 2 in South America. 1 in China. And 1, still under construction, on US soil. In Arizona. Same place where they tried to kill me years ago. I didn't hesitate. I went there. No disguise. No cover. Just me. The man they thought they erased. The original. They saw me coming. They didn't run. They welcomed me. Inside the desert compound, I found something unexpected. Children. Not clones. Real children. Born from surrogate hosts. Trained from birth. Programmed. They called it the reset. Forget replacement, the lead engineer told me. We are building the next generation from scratch. She didn't see the problem. Neither did the others. They believed in it. Believed they were saving the species. Fixing the mistakes. Eliminating the variables. I looked into the eyes of a boy no older than 10. He didn't blink. Didn't smile. Just watched. Like he was studying how to take me apart. I walked out without a word. And I sent every detail to every contact I had left. Then I vanished again. Because I knew this story had no real ending. Not for me. Not for the world. We created a future too fast. And we handed it to people who never learned to stop. Now, I live in a house with no name, in a town not worth mapping. I don't talk to anyone. I don't check the news. But every morning, I check the mirror. Just to be sure it's still me. And every night, I write. Not for fame. Not for justice. But for the one person who might find this someday and ask, what happened? This happened. We tried to become more than human. And in doing so, we forgot what it meant to be human at all.